Assalamualaikum and a good day to everyone. Biology is an exciting and dynamic science that relates to all living things and to the environments. It affects every aspect of our lives, from our health and behavior to the challenging environments, issues that we deal with in our daily life. The term biology comprises of two. The first one is bio, means living things, and the second one is logy, means study. So, biology is the study of living things. Generally, biology of organisms covers the topics such as cell as a basic unit of life, respirations, classifications of organisms, variations, evolutions, reproductions, and growth of plants and mammals, as well as ecology. It is a useful aid to the science students for a better appreciation on this subject. We have finished with the introductions for biology of organisms. Let's go in deep on reproductions of organisms. First of all, we are going to define the term reproduction itself. So what is reproduction? It is a biological process by which new individuals, organisms, which means offsprings, are produced from their parents. In living things, there are two forms of reproductions. The first one is sexuals, which involve two individuals, and the second one is sexuals, which only involves one individual. This form of sexual reproduction occurs in plant and animals. Let's have a look on what is sexual reproduction in animal.
For animals, sexual reproduction is the dominant reproductive mode as it requires specialized reproductive structures, control mechanism and form of behavior that assist fertilization and support the offspring. In normal development, each stage is successfully complete before the next stage begins. Sexual reproduction dominates the life cycle of nearly all animals. Specialized reproductive structures must be constructed and maintained. Offspring variation in traits which improve odds that at least some will survive and reproduce despite unexpected challenges from the environment. The development of the reproduction process pulls on tissue and structures. Sexual reproduction occurs when a new individual is formed by the union of two sex cells or gametes, a term that includes sperm and eggs or ova. The union of sperm and egg cell produce a fertilized egg or zygote that develop by mitotic division into a new multicellular organism. Sexual reproduction is the primary means of reproduction among the protists, cnidaria, and tunicates, but it may also occur in some of the more complex animals. Indeed, the formation of identical twins by the separation of two identical cells of a very early embryo is a form of asexual reproduction.
Next is the reproductions of plant, which include sexual and asexual.
Everyone knows that plants grow from seeds, and seeds are the most common example of sexual reproduction in plants. They are the embryos that result from fertilization of male and female gametes. Lower plants reproduction sexually by means of spores, which are fertilized in the presence of water, while higher plants set seed through pollination. Hand pollination for rockmelon is essential in order to get fruit. This video shows you the difference between male and female rockmelon flowers and how to hand pollinate them. The first thing you need to do is identify male flowers, and male flowers look like this. It's just a flower, and underneath of it is no cucumber, it's just a stem. When you look here, you can see a cucumber shape, and on top of that is a flower. That is a female flower. Hand pollination for melons starts with carefully removing a male flower from the plant. Strip away the petals so that the stamen is left. Carefully insert the stamen into an open female flower and gently tap the stamen onto the stigma. Try to evenly coat the stigma with the pollen. With that, you are hand pollinating. You are doing it.
Sexual propagation is the best way to maintain some species, particularly an individual that best represents that species. Clones are a group of plants that are identical to their one parent and that can only be propagated asexually. Plant tissue culture is one of the methods of asexual propagation. It is the science of growing plant cells, tissue, or organs isolated from the mother plant on artificial media. Tissue culture can rapidly develop new plants in an artificial medium under aseptic condition from a small number of stock plants. It is most sophisticated type of propagation. It involves dissecting a growth tip and removing the meristem tissue. All methods rely on meristem for their success, but tissue culture is the only one to use them directly. For this reason, it is sometimes known as meristem culture or cell culture. Meristem is removed under sterile condition, then induced into growth by the careful use of phytohormone such as cytokinin and auxin. This asexual techniques is an established and popular technology due to the advantages it offers, such as large-scale production of disease-free planting materials, comparatively uniform plant stand in the field, early harvesting of superior fruit bunches, round-the-year availability of the planting materials. Aseptic technique is the exclusion of invading microorganisms during experimental procedure. If sterile tissues are available, then the exclusion of microorganisms is accomplished by using sterile instruments and culture media. Before starting any sterile transfer, the operator's hand and lower arms are washed clearly. All internal surfaces of the cabinet are surface sterilized by swabbing with 70% of alcohol. The airflow is switched on to allow equilibration for 10 to 15 minutes, then the cabinet is surface sterilized again immediately prior to use. Only essential items are placed in the cabinet. A trolley with shelves is useful for holding stocks of equipment. Media and apparatus are rendered sterile by autoclaving at 121 degrees Celsius for 15 minutes. The use of disposable sterile plasticware reduces the need for some autoclaving. Aseptic transfers are more easily performed in a transfer chamber, such as a laminar flow hood, which is also preferably equipped with a Bunsen burner. If experimental tissues are not aseptic, then surface sterilization procedures specific to the tissues are employed. Common sterilants are ethyl alcohol or Clorox with an added surfactant. Concentration of sterilants and exposure time are determined empirically. This is the transfer of jar and apparatus through the clean chamber in tissue culture lab. These are the plantlets that produce through asexual propagation.
Advantages of asexual reproduction is that only one parent is needed. Once the organism is ready to reproduce, it can do so without waiting for a suitable mate. Once an organism is established in a suitable habitat, it is able to reproduce rapidly to produce many new individuals in that particular habitat. This makes it very successful. Once an individual is well adapted to an area and has successful genetic makeup, it is reproduced exactly many times to form many new individuals with that particular gene patterns. The disadvantage of asexual reproduction is that plants that are genetically identical are not able to change to adapt to changing environmental conditions. Whole communities of genetically identical individuals may not survive these changes. The advantages and disadvantages of sexual reproduction is that the advantages is the greatest advantage of sexual reproduction is the fact that the offspring all vary from one another and the parents. This is very important in a changing environment, as some of the new organisms may turn out to be better adapted to the new condition due to their different genetic makeup. The disadvantage, sexual reproduction depends on the fusion of male and female gametes, so usually needs two parents. This may delay successful reproduction. Sexual reproduction takes longer. Some organisms like flowering plants and simple animals are able to reproduce sexually and asexually. These organisms can take advantage of all conditions and are highly successful.
In conclusion, reproduction is a biological process by which new individual organisms, which is offsprings, are produced from their parents. There are two forms of reproductions, which are, the first one is sexual, which involves two individuals. The second one is asexual, which involves one individual. Reproductions in animals occurs when a new individual is formed by the union of two sex cells or gametes that include sperms and eggs. Meanwhile, formations of identical twins, which involve separations of two identical cells of a very early embryo, is a form of asexual reproduction. Sexual reproductions in plants succeeds through pollinations. They are the embryos that result from fertilizations of the female and male gametes. Clones are groups of plants that are identical to their one parents and that can be only propagated through asexual.